a lot less work to do. And you don't necessarily have to disperse the energy in the same way. Like, if you're evoking a goetic demon into your living room, and maybe your aunt's coming over later, so you probably want to banish, like, that space. You want to clear that space out. Whereas if you're putting it in the temple, you can, like, say, do your license to depart, disconnect yourself from the spirit, shut the door, lock it, and be done. And then it's in that space. It's not leaking over. And especially and just just having a door is key. Like, this is a big deal. Like I said before, Crowley structures his ceremonies on a system of knocks. So we have different knocks for different ideas. And just to be able to knock on the door in the rhythm that Crowley suggests and open the door for that purpose, and to have it always closed before you knock on it like that. And just to do that, it's a huge thing for just creating the space in your mind, the liminal space that you're going to inhabit when you are doing a ceremonial magical ritual. Now, in conclusion of this, certain tools can be transformed or transcended or transfigured, but this is done, as I said before, this is done after you've worked with them enough to understand them well enough to be able to play with them on that level and to manipulate them on that level. And after you have the experience, I strongly recommend that people do put their personal stamp on things, but for the experience, I strongly recommend that people just go by the book. What do we mean by causality?
Well, I mean, examples of causality.
Well, I mean, cause and effect is pretty simple.
I understand the concept in simple sense, but in the context of invocation.
In the comments, well, basically, what I mean is that, you'll be in a ritual and saying certain words, doing certain gestures, waving your wand in the air or whatever, and that is supposed to be the cause of an effect, like either causing a spirit to manifest, or maybe getting a new car if that's what you're after, or obtaining some kind of knowledge or information. Like, sometimes it's non-obvious. Like I say, that's a cult, so it's hidden. Like, you could do a ritual, for example, because you wanted to learn more about a particular subject, and then happen to find it in, like, find a book on exactly that you didn't even know existed in the discount bin at some bookstore that you just pass by on the street and you just see it there. You know what I mean? And then it's like, that's not obviously the cause of that effect, but it's a manifestation of you getting exactly what you were intended. And this is, I think, the fundamental thing with magic, and this is why it's still considered magic and not considered science, because we don't understand what the connection is and what's significant. And I think there's a lot of factors that are significant that we don't even know how to measure at this point. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, one of the facets of science is one of the defining characteristics of science is repeatability.
Right, exactly.
Is there an element of aspiring to repeatability?
Yes, and Crowley has tried to put his finger on that in his instructions on keeping journals. Like, he instructs people to keep journals not just of the ritual itself, but like what they're eating, what positions the stars are in at a certain time. Like, if you look at the old grimoires, they say you can only do certain kinds of magic when certain constellations are doing certain things. So, and that becomes the element of repeatability. It's like, you want the same planets and the same stars to be in the same places. And personally, when I've tried to do this, and I do fuck around with this a little bit. I'll do things at the wrong times to see if they'll work or whatever. And we don't know all of what's repeatable. Like, your body chemistry is never going to be the same. In the old grimoires, they always said, don't eat meat for 3 days beforehand, and stuff like that. And that's what creates a certain amount of consistency to the best that we can. And unfortunately, we don't know what the elements are that we have to repeat necessarily. Some of these things in these grimoires could be easily superstition, whereas other ones may be vital to the work, and then there are other things that they may not even have thought of that are important, that just coincidentally, like, there's no evidence when Crowley did his Enochian workings in the Vision of the Voice that he was really paying too much attention to what the constellations were doing, where certainly in my own working, the constellations indicated by the ether have to be in the sky at the time, but most of the time, if you actually look at the times that he was doing it, I'm told, I haven't gone through for that that level of detail, that he was on the right time, basically. So yeah, that is the big question, and that is essentially why we're dealing with magic and not dealing with science. I think that it could become science if enough people keep meticulous records and identify the things that need to be repeated and need to be consistent.
There's something I'm thinking about now, but it seems as though, like, in terms of, like, you're working with, like, something living entity, like these spirits moving on. They're like they're agents, right? So it's like even if we could predict all of the different things that influence the ritual efficacy or non-efficacy, right? Like you still have this relationship aspect
Right.
with, and that makes me part of science anymore than science. We gotta try to convince you to do something or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, but there was a certain period of time that people weren't aware of electricity, for example, and I think it's just a matter of we've created devices that now allow us to channel it and use it and generate it and so on and so forth. I think that it's not unforeseeable to me that we could create technology which would allow us to actually interact with these creatures in a more concrete way, in a more reliable way, a way that we can actually express and kind of prove. I don't know what that technology would be, unfortunately, but I think that technology has bridged the gap between humanity and all the other unknowns, essentially. Like that's what we've used to get in touch with all these other forces. So, at some point, it could allow us to take this out of the realm of metaphysics and in the realm of science, possibly.